Welcome to our last webinar on the art and science of paraphrasing. I'm Dawn White, your instructor, and really excited about ending our fourth session with sort of a summary or an overview of what we've been studying for the past 3 weeks. I'm going to dive right into the study, which is called Note-Taking and Report Writing. This study focuses on taking notes while reading nonfiction material and on using those notes to generate written reports. The study was actually one of those longitudinal research studies of reading and writing connection that lasted 5 years, using the mixed methods, quantitative and qualitative, and also looking at students that started the study in first or third grade in the fall in Seattle, Washington, public schools. You'll be happy to know that the majority of the students were culturally diverse that participated in the study. The name of the study, Executive Functions. Yes, we're going to learn about executive functions. Executive functions in becoming writing readers and reading writers. Note-taking and report writing in 3rd and 5th graders. Look at our authors. And the purpose of the study is to understand how developing writers learn to integrate reading and writing. The goal is to pinpoint the executive functions in each student and enhance growth. Executive functions are different types of mental self-government to integrate reading with writing. Well-developed executive functions are required for students to successfully integrate reading, writing activities such as paraphrasing. Students need to self-regulate the integration process across 2 written language systems, taking written information and rewriting it in one's own words. So let's look at the instructional approaches that impact executive functions. As we go through this, you're going to notice that these are the things that we've been talking about for the past 3 weeks. So you see, we have been addressing instructional approaches in order to help students progress academically by pinpointing their executive function. The first one is called the procedural approach that emphasizes the functional nature of reading and writing to accomplish goals, particularly academic tasks, examining note-taking and reading comprehension, synthesizing information, and reading used to write revision. Notice I put in red some words. Well, these words are the ones that we've already studied in previous webinars. We have the shared knowledge approach that investigates shared cognitive thinking processes across both reading and writing, which includes background knowledge. I know that sounds familiar to you because, again, that is something that we've studied previously. And then we have the rhetorical approach that assumes that the readers and writers increase awareness of communication by being the receiver and the sender. And you know, we've been talking about pair, share, students turn and talk to one another, the verbal knowledge or the verbal interaction that occurs in order to learn or to comprehend. But this study doesn't really address the instructional part, but the neuropsychological approach. So we're going to look at it from a different perspective, a neuropsychological approach in helping our students perfect their executive functions. So the difference is to study the individual differences in the learning during the process of integrating reading with writing. So this is the time that you look at the students' learning styles. You may have the students complete a multiple intelligence survey to get an idea of their gifts and talents. Emphasis is on developmental framework. Are children developmentally ready? You know, some things we teach our children, and sometimes we don't think about, are they at the age appropriate for them to truly understand what's taking place? Use reading and writing to learn new materials. Do we ever do that? Do we ever immediately dive into reading and writing just as a way of students to explore, to learn new information? Learn about text structures. While students are reading nonfiction material, do we take the time to go into semantics, word meaning and phrases, things like that? And then create and use meaningful connected text. Do we connect information for the students? Do we make sure that when they're reading nonfiction information, that we're doing a connection for them to help them improve on, again, their background knowledge? So let's look at some examples of executive functions. Initiating. Well, we have been learning about planning, organization, strategy use, fluency, and working memory. But the pieces that are in red are the ones that were actually covered in this study. So the study did not look at all the examples, but just the ones that's in red. Sustaining, driven by the ability to maintain attention over time. Now, you know that is a big one with our students, getting them to stay focused. And then we see regulatory, in that they inhibit and or delay learned responses to achieve a goal. Okay. This one is actually our students taking the time to reflect, because they could have learned this information previously. So are they taking the time to look at it again, or are they saying, this is boring, I already know it? How do we help students overcome that piece to let them know it's okay for them to look at materials again and again and again? Set shifting. This is problem solving efficiency, cognitive flexibility, and self-monitoring. And then I already shared with you that this study that we're looking at actually covered the inhibition, verbal fluency, planning, and or switching attention. So let's look at the results. Students who perfected their skills in executive functions were able to efficiently take notes from nonfiction texts and write a report in their own words. Paraphrasing. They were able to paraphrase just by looking at certain executive functions. Remember, the study covered inhibition, verbal fluency, planning, and or switching attention. So what does that mean to us? What does that mean as teachers? How do we implement this in the classroom? Well, you are already enhancing your students' executive functions using instructional approaches. The 3 webinars covered the approaches. You already know your students' learning styles through formative and summative assessments, learning style inventory, feedback from previous teachers, and observations. So your goal: enhance executive functions in small group settings during readers and writers workshops. So here's our review. Our first week, we did paraphrasing versus plagiarism. Compare and contrast both terms. That second week, we primarily studied vocabulary development and reading comprehension. Integrate the skills with writing to improve students' paraphrasing abilities. Week 3, summarizing and retelling. Synthesize information to impact paraphrasing. And our last week, note-taking and report writing. Capture author's terminology and rephrase in one's own words. That's it. So I know you're so excited that we have completed our last webinar. Thank you so much for all you've done in taking the time to go through this. I'm looking forward to you completing the evaluation of this professional development, and also get an idea of what you thought about the skills that you've learned. Has it truly impacted how you're going to address the reading and writing part to help our students master the art of paraphrasing? Have a wonderful summer, and talk to you later. Bye-bye.